Howdy, howdy, Mr. Cappy here, and this is the first live stream and introduction for anybody who wants to get to know me to get to know me. At some point, you may see some movement in the background. Um, I have my son playing on his computer behind me, so at some point I might hide the camera so that he can come and go as he pleases without being on the stream. But anyways, as the name implies, trucking philosopher, I do drive a truck. As you can, I'll start reading the introduction to this little booklet that I wrote a couple years ago. It's available on Amazon. And I would have made it free, but they required that I have some sort of price tag, and I put it at the minimal price possible. I don't believe I've ever sold a copy of it. And one of the things about my live stream is my motivation is not for people to be convinced that my beliefs are right. I am putting my beliefs out there so that other people can look at what I'm saying and prove me wrong, because I am not concerned about being right. I'm concerned about being right in the long run. So if you have any comments and you have an intelligent way to talk about what I'm talking about, go ahead. If you feel like making a fool of yourself and just insult me because you don't believe what I believe, go ahead. It's your right to do that. I might respond, I might not. If you see me looking up in that direction, that's where my display is, and I like looking to make sure that there's nothing going on in the background or anything like that. But anyways, I apologize. This is my first stream. I'm not experienced at this, but I want this to be an enduring thought process. But anyway, so I'll go ahead and start reading. I spent a lot of my adult life driving a truck up and down the interstate over the years, and thus have had a lot of time to think. After 9/11, I heard one question over and over again: what is the purpose of life? At that time, I was a devout Christian, and so my answer had a more theological overtone. I would tell people that evil exists so good can be identified. Without free will, we would not have the option to commit acts of evil, and therefore God has to allow evil in order for us to choose good. This answer has satisfied me for years, but as I saw the implementation of this principle, it left unanswered questions, the main one being, what is the purpose of life? I believe that we are eternal beings living a temporary existence here on earth, and when you consider what eternal beings really are, they're beings who have no physical form, no responsibilities, and really nothing that has to be done. Essentially, eternity is boring. For this reason, I believe that our existence here is needed in order to give us a means of connecting with each other in a physical manner. We're here so that we can experience life. I do have a Facebook blog, and it's at facebook.com/world to return to, all one word. And I've expressed many random thoughts that follow the core of this book closely. A little bit of a digression here. In my future live streams, there is a good chance that I'll be bringing up my Facebook blog and basically go over what I have written in the past and just kind of dig up some of the old stuff that I believe is worth repeating. And back to the book. My motto for life is, the meaning of life is to enjoy life. To help me live by this motto, I have two simple rules. The first one is the important one. Do everything reasonably in your power to help others follow rule number 2. And rule number 2, as you can see, enjoy life. The concept of life is really simple. Wake up, eat, live, poop, go back to sleep. If that was all that life had to consist of, it would be almost as boring as our experience as spiritual beings. In order to enjoy life, a new dynamic has to be added, and that dynamic is companionship. Without companionship, this world would indeed be a lonely place, and I might estimate a place not worth living in. When the element of companionship is brought into question, another element suddenly gains relevance, and that is equity. Equity may not seem like an issue in and of itself, but it does inspire the concept that drives most of what ails us, and that is evil. Next chapter, the nature of evil. The Bible tells us, for the love of money is the root of all evil. I'm going to digress a little and introduce another aspect about my thought processes. I'm not a scholar by any stretch. I don't need things to be broken down like a child most of the time. But when things are introduced in a way that involves a ton of minutia where it's not required, I see that as a hallmark of a conversation where one person is trying to gain the upper hand by, to put in quotes, baffling me with bullshit. Unquote. I once had a teacher that would tell me, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. When I read the Bible and then listened to Bible scholars tell me things that have nothing to do with what I just read, I ask myself, why would a loving God give me a body that is programmed to go against the things the Bible scholars tell me is the only way to avoid eternal damnation? In general, when someone speaks like a scholar, instead of a normal person, I kind of picture horns on their head and words coming out of their butt in a solid form. Back to the aforementioned scripture. Before I adopted the mindset of thinking for myself in spite of being told it was a sign that I lacked faith, I believed this scripture and took it at its word, and nothing seemed strange. When I started thinking more critically, I looked at this scripture and thought to myself, why would the personification of evil, Satan, want with money? I guess I should have said, what would the personification of evil? But over time, I realized that this was probably a mistranslation, and that the actual meaning was mammon. So not money, but mammon, which could be translated money. But it could also be translated to worldly possessions or power. I choose to translate this as power. So I believe the scripture should have read, so the love of power is the root of all evil. When I was a Christian, I used to have lines that I would use to kind of break the ice to start a conversation. Christians call it witnessing. One of my favorites was just for cold weather. On a cold day, I would go up to someone who was obviously cold and ask them, "Did you know that there is no such thing as cold?" This would kind of grab their attention, so I would go on to explain that cold does not really exist, but it's a word to describe the absence of heat. Then I would ask them, "Did you know that there's no such thing as evil?" This would usually grab their attention also, and I would explain that there really is nothing that is inherently evil, but evil is a word we use to describe the absence of good. A little bit of digression from the book reading. I've always said that I have no original ideas, because when you think about it, as many people as there are on this earth, somebody is bound to have thought about everything that I've ever thought about before. The thing that makes my perspective unique is the fact that I'm willing to share and admit that that's my perspective, and the way I have it packaged, or the different thoughts I have put together, is what makes everything that I have unique. So I don't claim to be an original thinker, you might say, just an original packager, I guess. But anyways, back to the reading. When you examine the nature of evil, it becomes obvious that the concept of black or white, no shades of gray, is so far removed from reality that you have to ask why they tried to deceive us in the first place. The degree of evil is a matter of perspective. If you are in a war and people are shooting at you, they are not doing anything evil in their eyes, but to you, they could be more evil than Satan himself. Or they could not be more evil than Satan himself. I don't like to use a lot of words to explain things, so I analyze people and instances and try to break them down into the simplest terms. When considering things that have been labeled as evil throughout history, and then breaking down things as they happen in my own life, I have it broken, I'm sorry for using broken so many times, I have broken it down to two aspects that exist in all evil. Evil is in play if someone is exercising undue power over another, or someone is depriving another of their due power. It took me a lot of years before I really came to that conclusion, and it still stands true to this day in my opinion. Many people don't consider the effects of what they're doing on others around them. When you're driving just over the speed limit and you come up to someone right at the limit, so you hover on their bumper to get them to either speed up or pull over to let you by, you're exercising control over them that is not ethical and not your due power. On the other hand, if you're on a 2-lane road driving just under the speed limit and someone comes up behind you and you speed up every time they try to pass you, you're exercising power over them that is not due to you. Many parents control every aspect of their kids' lives to the point that the kid starts resenting their parents. Parents need to realize that you can never really control a person, even if every appearance is that you are. It's been accepted throughout human existence that the parent is the ultimate authority over a child throughout their life. In biblical times, this authority went so far as to give them the ability to declare to the village that their child had a rebellious spirit and have the village stone the child to death. This amount of control being available to parents has been the norm for most of humanity. It wasn't until recently that many parents' abuse of this power started becoming visible, and government stepped in and started stripping reasonable parents of their rights, and the unreasonable parents have continued in the dark shadows with only a small percentage getting brought into the light. I really have a lot more to say about evil, and in my future broadcasts I'll talk more on the subject, but that's pretty much all I could really put in the book without becoming redundant. So anyways, the next chapter, the Trinity of Tyranny. The first U.S. president of the new millennium made a speech that in many ways has become lost in time, where he identified a new axis of evil that we are facing today. Little digression, that was George Bush talking about Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. I started thinking about this and contemplated about what evil forces were really most prevalent in our lives, and realized that he had misidentified the three most evil forces against us and deduced that they were I deduced that they are actually politicians, lawyers, and bankers. Since I wrote this book, I kind of refined that to power-hungry politicians, corrupt lawyers, and greedy bankers. Because, there are some politicians that really are trying to make a difference and impact our lives in a positive way. Some lawyers are really trying to bring justice, and some bankers are really trying to help people and not control them through their money. So, although broad, this has remained true, but I've refined my thinking to focus in on a more select crew and give them the proper label. Oh, maybe I did write that. I'm sorry. Axis of evil points to massive forces that come in with brute force and try to take over and intimidate. The forces of evil that are trying to take over are snaking their ways into our government, our society, and our wallets to slowly take over one aspect of our lives at a time. They are more like tyrants. With this new name, I started looking at the players involved and realized that not every politician was in it for the power, not every lawyer was in the back pocket of an evil player, and not every banker was greedy. Once these realizations were fully developed, I needed to come up with a more accurate description. I first was going to describe them as a trilogy of tyranny because they were all acts in a terrible play, but decided that the word Trinity was more accurate because I'm convinced that they think they're gods. Okay, power-hungry politicians. I did put that in the book. I apologize. Don't let the word politician fool you. These people are anyone in a position where they can influence the masses. Politicians tend to not be the smartest or most capable when it comes to being productive, but they tend to be people who can talk and sway the masses. They tend to be able to encapsulate different parts of their world and segregate them so convincingly that they can stand in front of a crowd and call for a persecution of those they drank beer with the night before. A politician with integrity is an endangered species due to the old but true adage, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Corrupt lawyers. As with politicians, those who fall into this category are not all lawyers. They're judges, legal assistants, and many others in the legal field who use laws and tricks of the trade to enable evil forces to jar themselves into the lives of everyday people just a little bit farther. Many lawyers start into practice in order to put themselves in positions to help make a difference. Many others start into practice for money. I've said many times that a law book is a trickster's playground. I've recently refined that saying to a rule book is a con man's playground. The thicker the law book, the more chances the man has to screw with those that just want to live. Greedy financiers. For those who believe or follow the Bible, the golden rule is not... I'm sorry. Oh, you could... that's a misprint. I meant to say, for those who believe or follow the Bible, the golden rule is, do unto others as you would have them do to you. However, for many it's, he who has the gold rules. There are those among us who seem to have an astute ability to have money come to them, much like dust is a static electricity charge. Dust to a static electricity charge. I think my son is getting ready to... Oh, no, never mind. He's not. When it comes to money, there are learned behaviors and ideas that will hold you in bondage and keep you from having the type of life you should have. While some people have these ideas, keep them in poverty and act as a barrier from ever having financial freedom. Others have these ideas, act as a driving force to give them an obsession to earn money and bring to them to the point where they can't do anything but get money, spend money, and show that they have power. I think that whenever I wrote that paragraph, it was a little bit convoluted. Basically, what I was trying to get across is that there are some people who, when it comes to money, no matter what you do or what you say, they will always be poor because they don't have the right mindset. They don't let money act as a tool. They use it as a god, basically. And there are other people that, as I put in there, money comes to them almost like static comes to as dust comes to static. And it just seems to be in their nature that they're always going to have money, and they always do. And it's basically because of the way that they approach money. It's a common misconception that money is a zero-sum game, where in order to make money, you have to get it from someone else. The fact is that wealth is created whenever value is added to hard assets and merchandise. Academics would like us to believe that wealth is also added when soft assets have value added, but when soft assets gain value, it's because someone has surrendered some value in a hard asset in order to either attain the asset earlier than they could otherwise, or to gain access to money they can use in order to leverage into more hard assets. Yeah, that's kind of a mouthful, but it's basically talking about how a lot of people make their money by basically taking it from others in the form of interest. And sometimes loans are a good thing whenever it's a reasonable interest rate, and it's something that does not put the borrower in bondage. But there are other what I call predatory lenders that look to put people in bondage financially by offering these loans that the person thinks they have to have. Anyways, sorry for digressing again. It's been a theme almost since the beginning of humanity that producers are seldom the people who benefit from the fruits of their labor. The majority of people live within the concept of an honest day's work for an honest day's wage. This has worked, but there have always been those exceptions where someone with the mind of a financier has been able to find a fingerhole in the community around them, then increase their power over the laborer until eventually they have most or all the power, and those they oppress rebel and the money is gone. That's basically the cycle of politics. This cycle changed as civilization developed until today politicians pass laws that have written by the lawyers and foster an environment where financiers are able to squeeze every penny possible from the producers. A lot has been made about the ever-increasing gap between the wealthiest and poorest in this country. The best explanation I have found for this gap is, as I stated earlier, a law book is the trickster's playground, and the thicker the law book, the more chances the man has to screw with those that just want to live. I think that another way to put that would be the way Ronald Reagan put it back in the 80s. Government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. And whenever I say government, I'm not just talking about Congress and the national leaders. I'm talking about the people that set policies, because nowadays it's not a legislative body that writes legislation. More and more power is being put in the hands of people in an office I'm a little bit tired right now, so I think you get the gist of what I'm saying there. It's a sad process where people go to the government or powers to be for help. Then the lawyers write laws that on the surface appear to be helping them, but in fact open a path for being held in tighter bondage, and the gap is widened farther yet. This next chapter deals with left versus right, your guide to politics. Since the dawn of civilization, politics has been described as left versus right. Historically, the left has always been seen as being for the people and represented freedom and represented freedom and idealism, while the right has represented strict rule procedures and established norms. Over time, things have devolved to the point where today the left is perceived to represent the government being our protectors and arbitrators of societal norms, while the right is perceived to represent big business interests and economic freedom from the government. The Republican and Democratic parties actually have the same goal. The difference is the tool they use to achieve this goal. Instead of imagining a line and choosing a point between the left and right to show where society is, we need to take that line and call it the control line. If the point is on the line, then the society has lost all freedom, and it's just a matter of if the Republicans won and we are being controlled through our money and fiscal policies, or if the Democrats won and we are in a totalitarian state where the government controls every aspect of our lives. Either way, both parties have the goal of total control. From this control line, we need to draw lines from the left and right and form an equilateral triangle. The apex of this triangle would represent anarchy. While it's true that anarchy would mean total freedom, the only problem with anarchy is that it lacks leadership. While the concept of anarchy means total freedom for everyone, the application of anarchy means total freedom for no one except the last man standing. I have a diagram that shows what I believe to be the ideal representation of balanced freedom. As you can see, the top of the triangle represents anarchy, and this is not an ideal place because, again, the actual implementation of anarchy means total freedom for nobody except the last man standing. And then you've got down here the control line, where to the right you've got big business being in control, and to the left you've got government being in control. Either way, you're being controlled through legislation or through control over your money. But it's not freedom either way you look at it. But about 2/3 of the way from the control line and the point of anarchy, and halfway between government and big business control, we have enough freedom to be able to live while having enough societal control that we can be free to walk down the street. And this right here is the point that I'm referring to. Whenever I first drew this triangle, I realized that it kind of looked like the all-seeing eye that you see on the back of our money. And I deliberated between whether I should keep this symbol, but I believe that the representation is so accurate that that point is actually sticking a finger in the eye of the all-seeing eye. Benjamin Franklin once echoed the sentiment, "Those who would trade liberty for security deserve neither." While I agree with this sentiment, we don't live in a vacuum, and there needs to be some trade-off in order to establish societal norms. The problem we have today is the notion of the whole country living under the same government focuses too much power on one individual. When power is dispersed, it's less likely that one person will be able to establish a totalitarian regime, and freedom is more manageable. The Democratic Party likes having a large government because it allows them to focus power and thus have the ability to control the population. The Republican Party, as I stated before, has the same goal, but their purpose is that a central government would give them the ability to put laws and policies in place that would create monopolies in every arena where we would only be able to shop where they wanted us to and act the way they wanted us to, or they could deprive us of essential services. Little note in my diagram, I considered using a pyramid instead of a triangle where religion was also a point on the control line, but decided that when religion is in play as a control force, it usually acts in conjunction with or instead of government. And this notion of conservative being for control in the bedroom as well as over your money has been a very pervasive theme. I think just a second. Are you on the other side? Oh, there he went. Okay. Sorry about that interruption. My son wanted to go to the other room. What I was getting ready to say is the idea of religious control and money control, both being themes of the Republican Party, has actually divided the Republican Party in such a dramatic manner. I tend to vote Republican because most liberals these days usually have such a firm belief that the government is the way to go that they tend to rely on the government to do their thinking. And one thing that I do not like are people, or one type of person I don't like is a person that is not willing to think for themselves. And Republicans are getting just as bad these days, and I voted independent the last few elections because I don't believe that there is a mainstream party that even comes close to representing the way I believe. And I'm planning on writing some in the future about this election coming up with whether Biden will win, whether Trump will win. Now Howard Stern has decided to run as a Democrat. And whenever I listen to Howard Stern's political beliefs, in all actuality, he is a very staunch Republican. And his the way he approaches business, the Democratic Party does not represent what he believes. And I have a firm belief that the reason that he's wanting to run on the Democratic ticket is to take votes away from Joe Biden so that maybe a respectable Democrat will stand a chance of winning, much like Ross Perot did with Bush versus Clinton, where Ross Perot took a lot of votes away from George Bush, allowing Bill Clinton to win when he wouldn't have under normal circumstances. I believe Howard Stern is going to play that role within the Democratic Party to keep Joe Biden from being nominated for a second term. Anyways, that's just my insight that I can see coming up. The next subject that I wrote about is individuality, because a little digression before I start reading. I believe that individuality is being so drilled into the head of kids today that it almost makes them feel isolated, because there's such a high such a high priority put on individuality that kids aren't being told that we're all a community and that we all have a common human experience. Even though nobody has had the exact same set of circumstances as any other individual, there is not anything that anybody has gone through that somebody else has not gone through already. And instead of being your own little island, you need to seek out people who are going through similar traumas or crises or even celebrations, and celebrate those similarities. I'm getting ready to... I'm going to go ahead and turn off the camera for a second. The easy way to do it. Okay, I'm back. Alright, so, individuality. Since I was a little kid, I've been fed a line that I was special and there was nobody else in the entire world like me. At the same time, I've been fed another line that I can do anything I set my mind to do. On an emotional level, this sounds really good and should encourage me. When you look at the application of those empty platitudes and misguided encouragement, the end result was that when I didn't succeed, I thought there must be something wrong with me. I've realized that there is not a single attribute, a single thought I have thought on it, or a single mistake I have made where there have not been millions of others who have shared my same experience. The only thing that makes me special is that I am me. My family is my family, and my life is in my control. That being said, these facts are not ideas to discourage or disappoint anyone. These concepts need to be celebrated. We aren't alone in this world. It doesn't matter what you've experienced, what you've done, or what's been done to you. You are not alone. Somebody somewhere knows exactly what you're going through and can be there to help you. When it comes to love, I believe that too many people put too much stock in love. Love is not a good reason to marry someone. No matter how much you love somebody, if they don't share the same priorities and values, you're asking for a lifetime of misery or for divorce. While I'm on the subject of marriage, I would like to say that many people will tell you that a happy marriage is all about compromise. I vehemently disagree about this. In a compromise, Neither side gets what they want, so both sides always lose. A happy marriage is about sacrifice. If we each will take a total loss on occasion, then both will have a win occasionally. If you remember that we are not as individual as society would like us to think we are, and what makes us special are the relationships we have and the things we do, then when we suffer loss or have the hope that all is not lost, we have it within ourselves to rebuild a life worth living, even though it's not the same. It's ironic that even though our individuality is less significant than we like to say it is, those who want to control us stress our individuality so that when we don't live up to our own expectations, we're easier to control. A defeated foe is easier to control than one that's living victoriously. Knowledge, IQ, and wisdom. A little digression on this. This was one of the most difficult chapters to learn, to write, and I've thought of new things and new ways to put some of the concepts in this, but I'm going to read it as it is, and in future broadcasts I will go into more detail. Learning is a funny thing. There are some things that you can go over 1,000,000 times and still not understand, while some things have barely happened, yet it seems like it's the foundation of your life. I've often told my kids that it doesn't matter what your IQ is, the first thing you need in order to learn is a desire. Something else I've learned is the old adage, experience is the best teacher. The fact is, experience is the only teacher. You can learn from your experiences, others' experiences, or experiences you create in your mind. While having a high IQ is helpful when it comes to the ability to retain knowledge quickly, if you don't have a desire to retain that knowledge or experience, you won't be able to retain anything. In this respect, wisdom is what gives us guidance to know what is important and what we can just not worry about. If we don't use wisdom, this can lead to us concentrating on the wrong information or not being where we need to be to acquire the information we need. Short but sweet on that chapter, but very important concepts and really the foundation for your knowledge base. In the conclusion, create a world you want to return to. I am not going to claim that I know that meant to be no, not now. I'm not going to claim that I know what life is all about or that I know what will happen once we die. I've come to some conclusions that I apply to my own life, and when asked, I will tell others how I believe. My motivation for this writing is that I have seen how things are changing and do not like what I am seeing. Everyone is acting in their own interest, living by the motto, watch out for number one, which is causing them to dump number two on everyone around them. If we're slowing down for everyone around us in order to go faster, what we're really doing is, if we're slowing down everyone else to go around us, I'm going to start that over. If we're slowing down everyone around us in order to go faster, what we're really doing is slowing the world around us down to a point that soon nobody can do anything. Everyone's experienced gridlock in traffic, I'm sure. In the past, we were told to create a better world for our kids and their kids, but today we're so busy creating what we want that people are leaving their kids in their car to die. Even if you don't believe in reincarnation, I'm asking that you look at your world around you and just imagine, if you were to return in another setting, in another time, how could you change your world to make it a place where if you were to start over, you would want to come back to it? The last part of the booklet was a little bit about myself and the reason for my writing, and I don't know that I need to read that out loud, but if you want to later, you can pause and come back and read that. Okay, so basically the conclusion: eternity is boring. Life is short. These last few things are what I call Keithisms. They're basically quick one-liners that I believe they're all things that I thought of as on one day or another. But I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I hear something and I retain it, but I don't remember that I heard it from somewhere. So if this is somebody else's thought, I apologize, and I'll admit to it if you can tell me that I'm wrong. So the first one, the first sign that you're losing an argument is when you start attacking the messenger rather than the message. Next, seek the truth wherever you can find it, and then draw your own conclusions. The next thing, the only things that you can really know are things that you know. Everything else is just hearsay. You never know it's true love until after the first fight. Someone who has to be loud to be heard seldom has anything worth hearing. Little digression on that. I've said for a long time there are three reasons that I'll use profanity. One reason is to get somebody's attention. 2, to quote somebody verbatim, word for word. And the third is to make a joke. Other than those 3 things, I believe that profanity really makes you sound like you don't know what you're talking about, and it sounds like you're not smart enough to figure out what you can say. Now, sometimes in a exuberation, something will slip every once in a while. It's happened to me, but you won't hear me dropping the F-bomb every other word, because that's the type of person that makes it sound like they don't know how to use their words correctly. Anyways, the best intentions expressed with poorly chosen words can lead to the worst of results. You've got to remember that when you're on the receiving end of those words also, because sometimes somebody's trying to help you and it just comes out wrong and it sounds like they're trying to hurt you. When somebody is always there for you, make sure that they're not hovering to control you. When life throws you lemons, make lemonade. You've all heard that before? Well, my little spin on it, just don't use artificial sweeteners. Nobody likes a phony. Your heart is a precious gift. Don't turn it into a participation trophy. That one is near and dear to my heart. Often, the one raising their fist at you is not the true enemy. That is something to remember. It's all about perspective and looking at somebody's true intentions and motivations. Sometimes they're raising their fist at you to keep you from running off the cliff. The winner is not. Oh, this one is one of my favorites also. The winner is not always the fastest, strongest, or best. The winner is the one who was able to master the moment when it counted. And this is another one that's near and dear to my heart. Forgiveness is not telling someone it's okay that you hurt me. It's you telling them that you won't allow that hurt to destroy you. And the last one is actually the first Keithism that I can remember coming up with. Responding to an idiot's stupidity with more stupidity only doubles the number of idiots. Actually, no, I think the first Keithism I came up with was, if you're going to be a smartass, make sure it's not the most intelligent part on your body. Yeah, because the guy that inspired that one, he never I don't think to this day he realizes that he was my inspiration. But anyways, I've not been looking at the chat to see if anybody is actually following along with me. So I'm going to take a look. It's recommending that I increase the bit rate, so I might do that for future broadcasts. and it looks as if nobody has chatted, so I'm guessing that nobody's actually current viewers is showing none. I'm hoping that somebody will come back to this and watch it maybe through its entirety. But like I said at the beginning of this this live stream, I'm not out to try to convince anybody of anything. I'm out to try to get somebody to prove me wrong, because I'm not worried about being right today. I'm worried about being right for eternity. So this concludes this this live stream, and I hope that somebody... Oh, my son's saying something. Hey, it did? Hi? Okay. Yeah. Alright, well, I hope you all have a good day. If you watched to this end, I hope you'll subscribe. And I'll try to do these live streams on a semi-regular basis. The future live streams will, some of them will be done from my truck. And on those I'll be using a microphone that's not quite as clear, so hopefully you'll still be able to hear what I'm saying. But for now, have a good night.